On today's Locked On Senators, Steve Staios setting the record straight. Brady Tkachuk ain't going anywhere.
And we continue with our 2024 NHL Draft Prospect Profiles. And we've got one player that Steve Staios has already drafted.
And two defensemen that he might draft in a month's time. That's all coming up on today's edition of the Locked On Senators podcast. It's your team every day.
You're Locked On Senators, your daily podcast on the Ottawa Senators. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
I'm Jake Sanderson, and you're listening to Locked On Senators podcast.
I'm Tim Stützle, and you're listening to the Locked On Senators podcast.
Welcome inside episode 1055 of the Locked On Senators podcast. I'm Ross Levitan on the outskirts of enemy territory in Winnipeg, Manitoba, alongside Brandon Piller up in the Blue Mountains. Today's episode is brought to you by Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONNHL for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. That's LOCKEDONNHL for $20 off your first purchase with Game Time. You can also follow the show on social media. We're at Sens Central on Twitter, LockedOn.Senators on Instagram. The show is free and available on all podcast platforms, including on YouTube, where a like, comment, and subscription go a long way to helping the show grow. Today is Tuesday, May 28th, and Pilsy, I'm sick of the complete BS as well. Steve Staios calling it just that when people in other markets just want to make Brady Tkachuk available despite him having 4 years left on his contract.
Yeah, I mean, look, I don't blame any other market for looking at Brady Tkachuk and being like, man, we could envision this guy on our team fitting in the playoffs. He would be such a big part of us getting through playoff rounds. Ottawa Senators fans are thinking the same thing. But here in Ottawa, as Ross busts out the Brady Tkachuk bobblehead, there we go.
Brady, you going to play in Ottawa next year?
Yeah, there. You saw it from Brady Tkachuk himself. This guy's nodding. Yes, he is going to be in Ottawa next year. I mean, look, Steve Staios at this point has got to be like, I just don't want Brady to think there's any sort of possibility that we're even talking about trading him, because there's no chance Steve Staios wants to trade Brady Tkachuk. No chance at all, unless Brady came to him with a request, and it doesn't sound like that's the case. So he's staying. Come on.
And I appreciate Steve Staios, and credit to Pierre LeBrun for just asking him, because what happened was on St. Louis radio, ESPN radio, they have our good buddy Jamie Rivers in the mix there, but they had Jeremy Rutherford. I think he goes by JP Rutherford on Twitter, but he's their beat writer, great beat writer. He's colleagues with Ian Mendez and Scott Wheeler, all those guys with The Athletic. But he was asked about Brady Tkachuk potentially being available, and they went into the diatribe of, well, hometown kid. We love a good hometown story. Don't get us wrong. Bring G home. Claude Giroux came home towards the end of his career. But I also thought they took it too far. What would it take to get him, play him with Robert Thomas? Who would the Senators want? What kind of deal? It was just all sorts of talk radio. And that's just what it is.
That's what I was going to say. Yeah.
But then people take the one clip and they put it out on social media to the extent where Jeremy Rutherford had to reply and be like, hey, I didn't say that. So he got radioed. Social media took it and run. And we even had to reply to it this morning. And I don't want to address any more of these garbage rumors. But you know what? When you have a player that everybody wants, when you see what kind of talent his brother is producing in the playoffs, when you just know that's where Brady's going to thrive, and the Senators have not gotten there for the 6 seasons with him, plus the one where they suck so bad they got him at 4th overall. That's when the teams are going to circle around and say, we're going to pluck that from that roster, that from another, but it would just be 10 steps backwards trading Brady Tkachuk. Let's not forget that Steve Staios, Michael Andlauer and company, the regime just started. If their first summer is trading the heartbeat of the team, then we're in for 5 more years of pain. There's no around that. So they came out, and I'll let you say the line, Pilsy. What did Steve Staios say specifically when it comes to Brady Tkachuk?
Well, I'm paraphrasing here, but I'm pretty sure that is complete BS.
That's the line I love too, but he went on to further and say, we are legitimately building around Brady Tkachuk. The whole point is having Brady Tkachuk to make this whole plan tick. So no 112-page document needed. I'll say it in one sentence. Senators captain Brady Tkachuk is here to stay. Now, another disappointing year. I don't even want to go there. Let's just understand that Brady Tkachuk will be at training camp for the Ottawa Senators.
Yeah, I mean, especially like he's going to have a kid by then. I don't think he's going to be thinking about uprooting his life. And I think he at least owes it to the new regime to be like, let's see once these guys have a full off season what direction this is heading. But Ross, last game of the Florida Panthers and New York Rangers, they put up a graphic that Matvei Tkachuk had just passed Walt Tkachuk in total playoff points. And they showed the graphic of Walt. I believe he played 61 playoff games, and I believe Matvei Tkachuk is at 57, something around there. And all I could think seeing that is Brady Tkachuk doesn't even have any playoff points. He doesn't even have any playoff games under his belt. So what does that feel like for him to be with his brother and dad sharing war stories about the playoffs, and Matthew can be like, hey dad, like you had a great run, old man, but I passed you in playoff points. And Brady's like, you guys need a drink? You guys need anything? I'll sit this one out. No playoff games. Like that's got to be tough on a guy that lives in such a competitive family household. And this is why these rumors are coming out now, Ross. They weren't coming out before when this team was rebuilding, when they didn't have expectations, but the Senators had expectations this season. They made a lot of big moves to try to make those expectations at least seem realistic. And they didn't just fall short. They fell off a cliff. They ended up worse. They took a step backwards from the previous season when they were supposed to take at least one step forward, at the bare minimum, hit the same point marker, at least be in the discussion of making the playoffs. So it's tough, but Sens fans, until things turn around, we can probably get used to these rumors happening throughout the season, trade deadline, if things aren't going well, if there's another kind of I don't want to say outburst, but if Brady Tkachuk has another media session where it seems like he's not happy with the fans or the situation, we're going to hear the rumors. Like, you just got to look at Steve Staios' quotes and the way he handled this and be like, no matter what anyone else says, we know he's here for now.
And just the way that Steve Staios has handled the whole situation, because he went on Pierre LeBrun's podcast earlier, I think it was in February before the deadline, when Ryan Whitney from Spit and Chicklets kind of threw the name out there as someone who might be available. And Steve Staios is steady. Some would say sleepy in terms of like, he's not going to give you a quote. He's not going to be, enthusiastic up there. He legitimately was laughing out loud at how asinine the thought of it sounds. So I think we just have to trust Steve Staios that he's going to do the right thing. They know more in terms of the exit interviews, what the mood was around the room. A lot of the naysayers would say that the Senators' locker room maybe wasn't the most cohesive place this year. But a part of me doesn't want it to be when you're losing. I think that there should be a little bit of snarl in there. Of course, respect and all that, but you shouldn't be content or happy when you're a team that's missed the playoffs for 7 straight years. Pilsy, you talk about playoff games for the Tkachuks. We couldn't even get Brady Tkachuk in the playoffs when they became 24 teams in the COVID bubble. We're still sitting on the sideline. So that has to change sooner rather than later, or else I'll kind of understand if he wants to go somewhere else. Now, I also hear the part of the fan base that says, hey, you're the leader of this ship. Let's 2 hands on the wheel, drive straight ahead. You're a part of this. Don't jump off. You're kind of like the guy that stirs the drink here. We're going to need you to be better to be a playoff team. And I hear that. But man, they need some help around him. And I'm looking forward to what is going down this summer with the draft, with the trades, with the free agency, because it's showtime, baby. We're running out of time on these guys' patience, and I think the patience of a lot of fans as well. So really looking forward to seeing how they build around Brady Tkachuk. And Pillsy, one more time for the people in the back. Enough of that complete BS. Save the BS and for LOSP.
Yeah, exactly. I just hope this puts it to rest at least till training camp. Like, at least give us some time in the offseason to not have to hear about this, for Brady to not have to deal with this.
Shout out to Czechia for winning world championships. Brady Tkachuk, though, did have himself an awesome tournament, and now it's officially summer for him. All right, Pillsy. So, full disclosure, the rest of this episode was recorded last night. I had my move today. I'm in the new studio, as you can tell. Oh, wait, it's the exact same thing behind me, but we'll spruce it up a little bit here as time goes on, and we will have another episode for you on Wednesday. But still, 3 great draft profiles coming up. Dominik Badinka is a guy who I've seen in some mock drafts around 25, 39, right shot defenseman, fits positionally. Of course, Marek Vanacker is the player that Pillsy teased right off the bat, the Bulldog himself, plus a big Russian defender. That's all next. You're listening to Locked On Senators, your team every day.
Today's episode is brought to you by our friends over at Game Time. Look, it's the playoffs. There's no better atmosphere to get at the game than right now, especially if your team is in it and everything's on the line. If you want to get tickets to a playoff game near you, you gotta go to Game Time. They got killer last minute deals. They got all-in prices, views from your seat, lowest price guarantee. Game Time takes the guesswork out of buying playoff tickets. Why would you go anywhere else? And it's not just playoff tickets. Look, the MLB is in full swing of the regular season. Ross, I'm going to go on Game Time right now. Let's see, Toronto Blue Jays. Let's see what Jays games are going for. If you're looking for, Ross, how much do you think a ticket to go see the Toronto Blue Jays play the Pittsburgh Pirates is? Cheapest ticket.
Whatever they're charging for the Buffalo Bisons, the way that the Blue Jays have been playing.
I mean, that's fair. You can get in to Rogers Center, $10. $10 to go see your Toronto Blue Jays play. As you can see, there are lots of options on the Game Time app. That's where I go if I want to go to a Blue Jays game. But it's not just sports either. Concerts, comedy, theater, whatever you like, you can find it on Game Time. So check out the last minute deals. You can save big, get a view from your seat so you're not worried about how it looks or surprised when you get there. And if you can find tickets in the same section in a row for less, Game Time's going to go ahead and credit you 110% of the difference. Take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONNHL for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem code LOCKEDONNHL, LOCKEDON NHL for $20 off your first purchase. Download Game Time today. Last minute tickets, lowest prices guaranteed.
All right, just a reminder, you can follow the show on social media. We're at Sens Central on Twitter, LockedOn.Senators on Instagram. The show is free and available on all podcast platforms, including on YouTube, where we do appreciate the like, subscription, and being a friend, telling a friend to join us with Locked On Senators. Back to our draft rankings. Coming in at number 47 is Marek Vanacker from the Brantford Bulldogs. Pillsy, I know Sens fans' ears are already perking up.
Yeah, and Ross, if any team is going to know this guy from a scouting perspective, it's the Ottawa Senators.
Steve Staios has drafted him before, and my goodness, he could do it again.
I wonder how many times that's happened, Ross, where a GM has drafted a guy in junior and then went on to draft him to the NHL. Be interesting if let us know in the comments if you're aware of any time that's happened, because that'd be interesting. But of course, Michael Andlauer owns the Brantford Bulldogs, so he's been watching them closely. And a guy I'm sure him and Steve Staios have noticed is Vanacker, as he led the Bulldog in points. So that's a guy you're going to notice. In 68 games, he had 36 goals, 46 assists, good for 82 points on the season. And he also had 7 points in 6 playoff games. So this is a guy that has had the spotlight shining on him in a Bulldogs uniform.
And Nick Lardis, who went in the draft last year to Chicago, got hurt in January, and that gave Vanacker an opportunity to play up the lineup, and boy, did he take advantage. He led the team in goals as well as points, and he was just a force every single night. He tested well at the prospects game. That helped his draft stock. And Corey Pronman in particular just said, hey, the more I watched him, the more I liked him. He just wonders, though, Pronman does, what role he's going to fit in at the NHL level. I'd be less worried about that and more worried about how well he's doing winning 50-50 pucks. The way that he's just fearless, going anywhere in the offensive zone. He's a guy that I bet you his line mates, they're begging the coach at the start of the year, put me with Vanacker, put me with Marek, because he's not only going to get them in positions to succeed, but he's also going to go out and do some of the dirty work for him in terms of hounding loose pucks and winning board battles. So I think that he's going to be a popular teammate wherever he ends up in his pro career, and he's going to just continue, hopefully, to ascend the way that his point totals would indicate. And not only did Steve Staios draft him as an OHL, but this is a first-round pick. And you know how Steve Staios has this thing. He goes, we need to decide what a Senator is. He's been saying that time and time again. Well, does this sound familiar? After signing or getting a commitment from Vanacker to go to Brantford, Marek brings exactly what we believe a Bulldog should be. Community, on-ice ability, excellent character. We believe Marek is a young man who will grow into a leader as a Hamilton Bulldog. So that's pretty high praise from Steve Staios already. And I think that this is one to watch, whether it's at 25, 39, that would be the range, I think, for Vanacker, though Bob McKenzie had him down at 47 on his list, 47 on Craig Button's most recent list. Well, McKean's was even lower, but again, their list is a bit older and his season did progress rather strongly. The guys who are highest on him, Scott Wheeler at 30, EP at 34, and Corey Pronman at 35. Now, Vanacker's 6 feet tall, 174 pounds, an April birthday with an average rank of 41 on our list. He's 47, like ironic that he's 47, which is where Bob and Craig have him. We got him there too. And I think that this would be great value if he is still available at 47, that area.
Yeah, definitely. I think with the Sens' second round pick at 39, like you mentioned, I think that's about the range. I think in the first round, especially with the Sens' first rounder at 25, that's a little bit much for me. But you can certainly see why teams would be interested in him and why scouts have him high. Crafty winger with creativity. He can set his teammates up, 46 assists. But he's not just a playmaker. He had 36 goals, too. So this is a dual threat guy. One of the knocks I saw on him is he could improve his skating a little bit more. Not to say he's a bad skater, but that's one area I found a lot of scouts kind of commented on is his skating's not top notch. The one thing that's interesting, Ross, is he only had one goal in 6 U18 games. And I feel like that's a chance for prospects to really shine. And he didn't really get a lot of playing time on Team Canada. Like you look at the time on ice, 4 minutes. He had 11 and a half minutes. That was his tournament high, but that was in a 6-0 win against Czech Republic. So I think they were Czechia rather. They were benching all their top guys and letting some of the bottom 6 guys. And then all his other time on ice are under 10 minutes. So at the international stage, he didn't really pop off probably the way he was hoping. So that'll be interesting to see if that affects his ranking and where he goes in the draft. I think he's a good player, Ross, but I think there's other players in that range that the Sens should target with the 39th pick.
We have seen Vanacker's name in mock drafts to the Ottawa Senators. The Athletic one with Wheeler and Pronman together had Vanacker coming to Ottawa with that 39th pick. So it's not out of the realm of possibility. And I would be on board if they got him at 39. 25, I couldn't talk myself into. I just couldn't, because there's not the highest ceiling there. There's a character player who Steve Staios described, right? Good guy, like leadership, all that. And a guy who's going to be a complimentary player and go hound pucks and do all the right things that coaches are going to rely on. But at 25, we need a higher upside swing. But this would be good organizational depth. There's no question about that for whatever team drafts Vanacker. For me, I'm looking at that range with the Julius Mietinens of the world, the Max Plants of the world, the Adam Yekos of the world. I'm just not ready to put him up there with Teddy Stiga, the crown jewel so far. And again, we're counting up to number 1. So we haven't covered the players above, but I've got Teddy Stiga step over Vanacker just because I think that they both have that, ability to do the little things, but Stiga's got the production just at another level, and I think it's a bit more translatable. So that's where I've got Vanacker. Anything 40 or later, I think would be a good spot for him.
Yeah, I'm a little lower on Vanacker than you, Ross. I've got him. I still have him in my top tier of forwards that we've done so far here. So a good player. I like him. I gave him 3 out of 5 stars here. I'm with you 100%. Not at 25, but if they went for him at 39, I could talk myself into it. And like we mentioned, nobody knows this kid better than Steve Staios. So if he went for him at 39, I feel like that would be one of those picks where Staios says, this is great value. And he convinces the scouting staff to lean a little more in that direction. Now, I'm not sure how Steve Staios and Don Boyd's relationship is. This will be their first draft. So we'll see how that dynamic plays out. But if there's one thing we know about the Sens is they love their nepotism and things like that. So it would not be a surprising pick for the Sens to take a guy from the junior team their owner owns.
But we're not asking steady Stevie Staios' Sens stars. We're asking Pilsy, what is it for Marek Vanacker?
I give him 3 out of 5 stars, Ross.
Okay, 3 out of 5 stars for Marek Vanacker, who comes in at number 47 on our 2024 NHL Draft Rankings. For more, go check us out. Individual Prospect Profiles on YouTube. On the other side, we've got a pair of very interesting defensemen, both good in their own zone, but one's got some offensive upside. We'll get into that next. You're listening to Locked On Senators, your team every day. All right, Pilsy. Reminder, people can follow the show on social media at Sens Central. Go vote for the mock draft right now. Who knows what number we're on by now, but it is great because I left all the polls open. So even though I can continue and we nail down who the pick is, there's some close ones so far, but you can go and have your say and vote all the way through. Really love the engagement there on Twitter at Sens Central. All right, coming in at number 46 on our 2024 NHL Draft Rankings, we are going to Mother Russia, the heart of it in Moscow, where MHL defenseman Matvei Shuravin is coming in. This guy was 6'1" going into the year. Now he's listed at 6'3". He's telling people he's 6'4", and his dad was a 6'6" volleyball player. So what's in the gas or in the food in Russia? Because you got Silyev, 6'7". Last year you had Dmitry Simashev at 6'5". These are some monster defensemen coming out of Russia. Now, not as physical as an Anton Silyev, or you think other Russian defensemen like Nikita Zadorov, but
Mukhmadulin.
This guy, he's got that modern day. He reminded me a lot of Simashev with the skating, so smooth at such a big size.
Yeah, I'm not quite at the Simashev level with Shuravin here, but
shades of okay. Simashev was 6th overall last year.
Yeah, okay. I just wanted to make sure how lofty we're putting Shuravin here. Now, certainly there's a lot of things like the size right off the top. You got to love that. He did get 11 games in the KHL, had 2 assists, but he spent majority of his time in the MHL over in Russia. 22 games, no goals, 7 assists. And EP mentioned in the write-up that they did about him that he started in the MHL and he's a little shaky, not really finding his footing, not able to contribute the way he kind of is expected to. And then in a weird turn of events, but sometimes we see this in North America as well, when he was elevated to the KHL, he actually thrived and he was a much better player because Shuravin is one of those players, at least from EP's write-up, that they're mentioning he needed that structured game. It allowed him to play at a pace that worked for him. He's able to slow the game down more. He's able to rely on his defensive partner maybe a little bit more than in those lesser competition levels. And maybe he was slotted in a lesser role in the KHL too that kind of fit his profile a little bit better here. But he plays a good physical game, uses that size, and he defends well. I think it's fair to call Shuravin a shutdown defensive defenseman.
Definitely agree with that. And he got to play with a couple Sens legends over in CSKA Moscow. Vitaly Abramov still over there
Nice.
kicking. And he was also on the same D-core, albeit you mentioned only 11 games at that level, with Freddie Claesson, who played
Oh,
the full
okay.
season over with CSKA Moscow. Obviously, it's a talented team. They're Gagarin Cup champs, all that. He is still working his way up there, but this is a good sign if he's getting KHL minutes at that young of an age on that quality of a team. Now, MHL, I hope he's done with that. That's basically the AHL of the Russian system. But for me, it's just a matter of like, let's get this guy overseas. If you're going to be a defensive defenseman, I want you to know the angles of the boards in the NHL, and I want to be learning in the system that I want you to play in a more how do I say this, North American style of play. But to me, I mean, maybe this is just stating the obvious, but after what they did last year at the draft with Arizona and Bill Armstrong going with Daniil Boot, going with Simashev, like this to me would be a very Utah second round pick. They've got 1 million picks. I feel like this would be another Russian to add to the crop and have these guys all come over together and help build that thing. They're also all beasts because Boot is 6'5" as well. So I think he'd fit in well in that system. He is a left shot defenseman, but he's a guy who I think a team that already has a ton of skill and maybe some offensive minded defensemen in their system could use him to balance things out.
Yeah, I think that's a fair way to approach it. So we've talked about the defensive side of the game. That's definitely Shuravin's bread and butter. However, the offensive side, you can see from the points. Now, I'm a little confused on this. EP has their stats that he didn't score, but then I read some articles he did score in the KHL. So I don't know. There's some kind of cloudy Russian stats that are getting lost in translation. Maybe we'll get to the bottom of that. But the one thing EP really does is they lean on advanced analytics, obviously, and the advanced analytics for Shuravin on his ability to transition the puck up the ice were very bad. All over on the red side, whereas his defensive game on the right, on the blue side. So good numbers there, but they really talk about how he struggled to move the puck up ice. So Shuravin's the type of defenseman you want, that yin and yang. You need a puck carrying, more offensive minded guy on the right side of him. Otherwise, teams are going to check the game notes. They're going to dump it into Shuravin's corner every time and then hope to jump on some juicy turnovers that he puts up the middle, tossing some pizzas up the ice there. So that's one major knock on Shuravin. But hey, there's offensive defensemen that struggle defensively. And then on the flip side of that, you're going to find defensive defensemen that struggle offensively. So it's all about finding balance within a D pair.
McKean's is extremely bullish on Shuravin. They're sure of it. At 19th overall on their rankings, he's at number 37 with Craig Button, 38 with Corey Pronman, 40 with Bob McKenzie, 43 with Chris Peters, all the way down at 71 with Elite Prospects. He was an honorable mention just outside of Scott Wheeler's top 64. I still like him, though. He's my second ranked defenseman so far. So far. Will Skahan, I've got ahead of him. These two shutdown defensemen, I think Will Skahan's got a bit of a mean streak in him, which is what leads me to lean in his direction. Both of them probably not the most skilled with the puck yet, but they both have the size combination with defensive awareness and high hockey IQ that you can vision the best case scenario for the development, where they're a 22-minute a night, like no worries when they're on the ice type defenseman, low maintenance. And I think that you're going to have to wait for Shuravin, especially if CSKA wants him in their lineup. They will flex their muscle on his contract. So if a team wants him over here quickly, maybe not the type of player, but if you're looking more of a long-term situation, this could fit in for what some teams are trying to do. My guess, and he comes in 46 on our rankings, average 41.3. I think you're going to look at a contender draft, like a contender right now, drafting him with their second round pick towards the end of the second round.
So, Ross, I know you always like to wait, just pull it back to the rankings for a quick second for people on YouTube. I know you like to go Olympic style. I think that would be a good exercise for Shuravin here. Take out 19 and take out 71, a 52 range, ranking range there, if my math is correct. So, I think you're looking early second round. If the Ottawa Senators selected him with the 39th pick, Ross Levitan's reaction would be
Cool.
Okay, cool from Ross Levitan.
It would be a 6.7 out of 10 excitement level.
Okay, all right. I'm much lower on Shuravin than you are, Ross. I've got him in the same range as Leon Muggley. These two guys, I like their pro experience, albeit only 11 games in the KHL, but EP mentioning that he was much better in the KHL than the MHL. I like that. Muggley, a lot of games in the Swiss League, so I like that pro experience. I've got him at 3 stars here. I don't think this is a guy the Sens should target with the 39th pick. Like you mentioned, he's likely going to be a project guy. You're going to have to deal with the Russian factor, which it can either be nothing or everything, right? Like it can be nothing and you can figure that out and you can work out a deal, or it's a complete dead roadblock and you're waiting years to even see him come over to North America, let alone get up in your system and get up to the NHL. So that is not the direction I think the Ottawa Senators should be going. They don't have the prospect pool depth to be taking that kind of risk on a player that I don't see with a lot of upside here. So I've got 3 stars for Matvei Shuravin.
Shuravin comes in at number 46 on our Locked On Senators NHL Draft Rankings. For more, go check us out on YouTube. All right, coming in at number 45 on our 2024 NHL Draft Rankings, we're going to Malmö in the SHL over in Sweden, where we find Czech defenseman Dominik Badinka, your modern day defenseman. Can skate, can move it. He's a one-man breakout. Watching this guy's highlight tape, he just gets it behind the net, and it's guaranteed to get out of the blue line.
Yeah, Dominik Badinka is an interesting prospect to follow along with, Ross. You mentioned Czechia prospect playing in Sweden now in Malmö. He also spent a quick season in Jokerit in the U20 league last year. So you go from Czech to Finland to Sweden. So this guy's getting a bunch of different experience here, which I think you can spin zone to be a good and a bad thing. You know, you kind of want these young kids to get comfortable, especially switching countries like this. I'm not sure the language barrier or how that works, if that's tough on them. But also it's like, hey, these guys are doing what they need to do to advance their career. So you got to respect that. In 33 games in the SHL, he had 1 goal, 3 assists, good for 4 points. So he's not lighting it up offensively, but also this is a young kid playing fairly big minutes in the SHL. I looked at his game logs, and I'd say it's safe to say he's averaging more than 15 minutes a night in the SHL. So that's very impressive. And Ross, he's got a twin brother that plays on the same team and has followed his progression the whole time. So that's kind of cool that the twin brothers have been able to stay together like that throughout their development here.
Yeah, that is really cool. For Badinka, he's 6'3", right shot defenseman. So all of a sudden, ears perk up if you're a Sens fan. He's 183 pounds. Also, one of the oldest players in this draft. He's in November 2005 birth year. The draft rankings for our 7 entities, not as widespread as some of the others, but still quite the range. Corey Pronman at 27. Then you've got elite prospects at 38. Wheeler at 42. Bob at 42. Peters at 48. And then bringing up the rear is Craig Button at 61. So Craig's a little bit lower than most on him. He's average 40.9 on our rankings. And despite not putting up much offense, still does so many little things well. One thing he didn't do, though, last year is make the World Junior team. Now, we did Thomas Galvis. He made the team. Another draft eligible. That kind of pauses. It's like, why is the Czech team not putting this guy out there when he's got pro experience and all that? Is it something, maybe the politics behind the game? Oh, you left our country to go play in Finland and then in Sweden. Is there something there? Who knows? But there's a lot to like for Badinka as well. And there's a player in there that I think would be, as we mentioned, that modern day, like Like, I think if he hits at his peak, and I'm not saying that he will, but like that Slavin type, where it's like you're confident when he's on the ice when you don't have the puck, but he's also going to turn it around and get it to your forwards in a hurry when he does. Now, obviously, that is if it hits a jackpot, because Slavin's one of the best two-way defensemen in the National Hockey League. But I would like a swing on him at 39. 25, a little rich for my blood, but 39 would be a great spot for Dominik Badinka, in my opinion.
Yeah, so you mentioned he didn't make it on the Czech World Junior team, and then maybe you're like, oh, didn't make World Juniors, and I'm not seeing any U18 stats here. What's going on here? Well, he did miss the U18s because of appendicitis. I think it seems like he probably would have been poised to make that team at the very least, so that explains that situation for him. Corey Bronman mentions he's got a good stride, can move the puck with tempo. He's got great straight end speed, so you love that for racing in loose puck battles. He's usually going to win those more often than not. He can set up plays in the O zone, so you're already hearing traits of a two-way defender, right? That's what you want.
Well, I wish he was just a little more physical.
I was just getting to that, Ross. He can be physical, but not in an imposing way. Like no one's shoulder checking to be like, oh man, here comes Badinka, I'm screwed, right? Like they're probably expecting him to play the body, but it's not gonna separate the man from the puck or knock a guy down or anything like that, which, isn't the worst, but you want him to improve that as he gets going, but also a young guy playing in the SHL. So he's going up against men. So a little bit much to ask for him to be running guys over in that league. So that's fair. I have Badinka in the same range that I have Leon Muggley and Matvei Shuravin. I'm impressed that they have pro experience already. They're playing up against men. You gotta give them props for that. But I don't see one shining attribute for Badinka where I'm like, oh man, you can't miss on that. You got to bank on this and you're going to work with it. So I think he's a nice prospect, but for me, Ross, I'm giving him 3 out of 5 stars here. I don't think I would be upset if the Sens went for him at 39, but I think it'd be a little much for me. And I think there's other talent that you could try to take a swing on there.
Okay, funny enough, I have him right next to Matvei Shuravin, but I've got those two both right behind my top defensemen still as we continue to explore higher and higher in our draft rankings every day. But I've got Will Skahan ahead of Shuravin and Badinka, 1, 2, 3 though, back to back on my rankings in the mid to late 40s. So I'm higher, I guess, than you by just a little bit, but I do think there would be more talent available. And if they do take Badinka, I'll be like, were they looking more just positionally? Like, was he the best right shot defenseman available at that time? I'm curious to see where he goes, but I think a fan of that team will be really watching closely next year, hoping that Badinka can pop off with a second season in Malmo under his belt. So that is Dominik Badinka coming in at number 45 on our Locked On Senators NHL draft rankings. All right, that's Dominik Badinka who comes in on our draft rankings at number 45. For more, go check us out on YouTube, Locked On Senators. All right, thanks so much for watching today's show. Really appreciate it. For Brandon Piller, I'm Ross Levitan. This has been another edition of the Locked On Senators podcast. Your team every day.